Kai Havertz's latest injury has left Arsenal in a difficult position. However, Arsenal still have players in the team that can play up front, while it not being their original position or place you expect them to play. In this video, we're going to talk about exactly the 5 players that I think could cover that role for Arsenal in the time of need, and players I think Arteta will actually look to use there. So let's get into it. Now, it is a difficult period for Arsenal and specifically the fans. We've gone through how angry we are about how the club is run recently and some of the decisions made in the transfer department, but there's nothing that we can do other than watch and see what happens and hopefully find some solutions within the squad. Now, in any given situation, not having 2 strikers with 2 long-term injuries is going to make the team a lot worse and are very much difficult to use, but you would mostly see teams use wingers there or people in forward areas to try and encapsulate in that role, which Arsenal simply can't really do as well because of the injuries to the wing position. However, despite that, I think some reshuffling could be done in the forward areas, at least more likely in the games coming up against Leicester, and that's why my first suggestion for the striker role is something that is going to be quite obvious, and it's going to be Trossard. Now, I think Trossard will probably be the go-to player to go there because he obviously has played in centre forward before for Arsenal and he isn't exactly the worst in that role. However, one of the problems I have with this is the fact that Trossard not only has been our best winger across the last month, he's been way more direct, his crossing ability has improved heavily, I feel like, and also his pressing on that left hand side, being the second phase of the press, is very important. We're going to miss that with Havertz, although Trossard probably can replicate it the best. This is why I can't really see Arsenal keeping the same pressing standards. I think Odegaard and Rice may be the actual 2 that maybe start the press or try and push the team up the field, but it does really depend on who actually plays in that striker role and what sort of system that we play. Now, Trossard is someone that can get into the box effectively, and I know he's not had the best season in front of goal. His stats show that as well, and he's not necessarily been clinical enough. Last season he scored 17 goals in all competitions and has been relatively one of the most box efficient players within our team. He picks up good positions in the box, can come back, come forward, and gets his foot on the end of things. Now, he isn't very good in the air, which is something that we might have to tweak a little bit with the amount of crosses we do. Now, the major concern with me for Trossard being up front is that wing presence. Usually when he's played up front before, you've had people on the wing like Saka and even Martinelli be able to run in behind players and cut the ball back to him. Now, let's just say that Nwaneri and Sterling are going to be the players that play in the wing. Nwaneri can do that in a 1v1 going out wide and can take on players on the outstretch and go inside, but he mostly is a player that is going to bring the ball down and try and move into that half channel just outside the box. Now, he can do crosses to the back post in order for this, but this isn't really going to affect Trossard, who probably will be in that central area, you have to think. So maybe Trossard isn't the best use there if he's just simply not going to get the ball, and when he was playing in left wing anyway, there was multiple examples of where he moved into central areas and we had people like Rice and the left back Miles Lewis-Skelly or Calafiori kind of occupy that sort of role. So I think that Trossard should stay out on the left and he can still move up front if we need him to, but I still think he is the most likely person for that role right now. Now, the second player we're going to talk about is probably another obvious one. Is Nwaneri. Now, we spoke about him a little bit yesterday, but he is a player that has played in that shadow striker role / centre forward role in the under 21s. Obviously, I know this is a big jump up and a very different platform, but it is something that we may need to play. Now, I think Nwaneri could be a good player for this. I'm not really necessarily sure about his pressing. I haven't seen too much in that perspective, and he isn't a player that gets on the ball in incredible amount, even from that right wing spot. We've seen him play on an island quite a lot, and he only has around 30 touches a game, which is a lot lower than other players within our squad. Now, this could work and could be bad for the striker role. We've seen Havertz and Jesus get a lot of interactions on the ball. They come deeper and work with that build-up play, which has helped Arsenal progress the ball down the wings and get further forward. However, there has been problems with that. It hasn't been perfect. Our strikers aren't really getting in the right positions in the box, which we need them to, and more importantly, Havertz and Jesus aren't brilliant finishers. They have patches where they can score everything, but consistently them 2 players aren't going to be that prolific. Now, that is something that we have seen Nwaneri do, mostly from that outside the box range, but you have to feel like if he can do it from there, he could probably do it inside the box as well, even closer, and he's a confident player that does love shooting. Now, if Nwaneri's to play up front, we need players to run centrally past him. Odegaard's going to have to make a lot more runs off the ball into them attacking channels than he has before, and there's going to be a lot more reliance on people like Declan Rice to actually make their movements within the box and kind of be that one man with him in there. Also Trossard, of course, as well. But I do say this, he is a midfielder and has proven in the past he can bring the ball up from a little bit deeper positions and progress the ball, and he's going to be more used to that sort sort of outside the box range, the half channels, the central areas, so he easily could come deeper and maybe work with the ball a little bit. He's not incredibly strong, but he does use his body well, but I do worry about some of the centre backs being quite dominant in the Premier League over him. And in sort of short glimpses, he has proven he can run in behind, mostly on that right half channel, but that is okay. Off the ball, he can move a little bit, maybe out on the right, and Trossard goes maybe centrally when Arsenal have the ball and we're trying to press and build up quickly. So it is definitely something that I think could work. It just kind of has to mean some things have to happen. He needs some help, more importantly, but he is a good finisher, and I do think no matter what, he will be getting time within the game. Now, the reason why this could be problematic though is because this means Sterling basically has to play it on that right, a position that not only I think is not been good enough in, he's not been good enough on the left either, don't get me wrong, but on the right he's looked significantly worse. He looks too slow, he can't really take people one-on-one, his physicality is completely dropped off a cliff, and he just takes too many touches. He's not quick enough with the ball, he's not quick enough at making decisions anymore. And in a world, I guess you could see Sterling maybe go up front to be that poacher style player that we used to see him for Man City, where he'd get in the back post, but I just don't think that Arteta will want that because he doesn't show enough physical nature and he's not good enough at running at the moment. He's not athletic enough in my opinion, so I don't really think Sterling's an option. But if Nwaneri is to play up front, then that means Sterling has to play on the right. Now, them two are the two obvious selections with our only three forwards that we have fit. However, the issue is with both of them is that they do mean people like Sterling have to play. It does mean some rotation has to happen there, and if one of them three get injured, we're even down to two, so someone rogue is going to have to play in these positions, and they can't play every 90 minutes. There's going to have to be some changes there, even though I do expect Tierney probably to be that left wing backup. Now, this is where we're going to get into some rogue shout. Yesterday we did speak about Mikel Merino, and he is my third option, which I know some people are going to be still confused with. I briefly spoke about it yesterday, but my real thinking about Mikel Merino, not only is it because we have heard that he could be that emergency striker option, is that I don't really want to upset any of the team. Now, what I mean by this is I've seen people say maybe we should just shove Gabriel up front and cross the ball into him. Yet again, don't think it's the worst decision, but that does mean that we're going to have to play Calafiori in left centre back. Not the worst, but not something I would do in the big games right now because he is a bit weak, I think, in 1v1s. And I don't really want to upset that defensive line that is kind of settling himself right now. Ben White's coming back, that is fine, he's top class. Calafiori and Miles Sketty can rotate, but I'm not sure if I really want them two centre backs to leave each other. This is why Merino, I think, can be a great shout. He isn't a starter at the moment, and I don't really think he will be. With Rice being fit and Partey being fit, and even Jorginho being fit, you could argue, I think them three are more likely to play the defensive midfield role and the left centre mid role for Rice specifically. There could always be a sort of motion as well when Miles Sketty plays that left centre mid role, but obviously we'll get into that another day. Now, why I say this is because Merino has been a little bit lackluster, I think, in build-up and pressing, and in build-up he's definitely been better than he has been off the ball, I think, but he's sometimes a little slow to get them passes in and them connections, which I do think has made us a little bit weaker in certain areas. Off the ball as well, his pressing is nowhere near Declan Rice. Declan Rice is going to start over him. It gives us so much more pressure on the games, and he's been absolutely superb recently, so you just can't see him get him in the team. Now, one of the reasons why I do like Merino playing though is off the ball when Arsenal were in build-up, he is actually quite important. I've seen a few times that he has probably been our most intelligent player in this role, from doing actions outside the box rather than doing them in them. I think Rice is great at running in the box late and making them runs for players, but what I love about Merino is that he loves coming into the centre of the pitch and the right hand side. We've scored a few goals over the time that he's been in the team where I don't think he gets enough credit for. There's been moments where Odegaard has actually come deeper to progress the ball, and Merino has moved into that right half channel to sort of occupy his space. When Merino does this drags some of the man-to-man marking that the other teams have away from that central area, allowing Odegaard to impact the game and put balls through deeper. This has happened quite a lot for Arsenal, where not only Merino coming over sort of shifts the whole other team to this side, it gives Arsenal a bigger transitional threat. When we progress the ball quicker, you've seen Declan Rice lift the ball completely over to that left-hand side, where then Trossard or Martinelli has space, and Gabriel can do them passes over the top to Trossard, another reason why I want Trossard to stay on that left-hand side. Now, this would be very interesting. I don't know how this would work with Merino being up front, Partey being in DM, and Rice being in that left half space, but you could have Rice being next to Trossard, being able to make runs down the left-hand side while Merino pushes people to the right as well. We see it a lot where Havertz, specifically when he's playing striker, comes very much deeper, and we don't really want him there. You're the striker, you need to be in the box. But Merino isn't a striker, he is definitely more of a midfielder, even if you argue Havertz could be that as well. And I think he's played a lot better when he's had people like Odegaard and Rice next to him, which he will have not only that as well well as Partey. Now this could see Merino play a little bit of a false nine sort of role, shadow striker, where he's not necessarily up front, a bit like Nwaneri. He's more in that centre of the park and more players can run. He can make them runs into the box alongside people like Trossard, Nwaneri and Rice, but he's not necessarily always that outlet. Another reason why I think this could be better is because it sorts out a lot of Arsenal's issues, I think, in build-up maybe, but it doesn't actually fundamentally change the way we have to play going forward. We love crosses, we love getting our wingers 1v1. If we can get that more and quickly transition the ball to them, Merino being in the box alongside Rice and maybe Trossard as well is pretty good for the whole Arsenal box crushing system where we get 3 players in the box. Not only that, you could have one of the fullbacks be as that second ball nature just inside the box or outside it as well, and I think that's something that we already have shown we love doing over the last 2 years, so it wouldn't change it in too much. Now obviously I don't think Merino's the best solution in the world, but I do think he actually could be one of the better solutions that we have. I do think there will get to points where Arteta will bring him on. I think Merino might come on up front and maybe we'll see how it works, but I don't see him starting just yet. I could see him sort of rolling with what we have said earlier, but it's definitely something to think about at least. Now the fourth shout is even more rogue. I never really considered this shout, but I had a few people talk about it on Twitter. I got a message as well on Twitter, so shout out to that guy, about Ricardo Calafiori potentially being that striker option. Something I said about Merino with not upsetting the current conjunction of the team will happen with Calafiori. I know he's not necessarily a starter, Lewis Skelly is, but Calafiori can easily come in left back right now, and I think they're the only 2 real players that are going to play there, unfortunately for Kivior. But there is some nuance to Calafiori being up front, which I do like. His movement inside the box or just outside the box in that left back spot I think is incredible. I do think it is one of his clear positive signs of him, and he's better than anyone else at it. I think he's better than any of the other fullbacks we have around them sort of areas. The ability he has to completely understand space and when to take players on around these areas, but more importantly is to be confident. He has that sort of young confidence about him where he wants to have shots from anywhere, he wants to get into the box and he wants to be important. I do think could be a good thing. There's no doubt about it, his ball striking ability is definitely one of the best. He has scored only 2 brilliant goals for Arsenal so far, but even against Genoa you saw some of the movements he did inside the channel. He's just off there where he scored, which I can see it potentially work, and I know it's a little bit rogue and it will make us very dependent on our left hand side, but I think that is kind of what I want right now. We've spoken about Arsenal not really having great pressure on either side, and I don't think that's going to change without some of the players that we have in our team, but Nwaneri has proven that when he's on an island he can work really well. If you switch the ball out to him quickly, he will take players on, actually taking that space, which we haven't seen people like Martinelli do enough. This is why I kind of like that, because it gets all of the pressure that Arsenal can have on the left hand side. You can even have people like Odegaard come over, leaving Nwaneri just by himself on the right hand side. He doesn't need to bother with build up and having the ball too much, where he can be also one of them players at the end products that we need. Obviously I don't really know how it would work in certain ways. I think you would see Calafiori basically still kind of play a bit left backy and occupy all them different channels, and they would always rotate with all the left hand side, but maybe that would work a lot better. And of course we don't know about how good he is in the box about movement fully. Like I don't know how dominant he is against opposing defenders when they're focusing on him. I don't know how dominant he is in the air, but he has a good shot and he's got good movement and he's confident, and at the moment I genuinely think them 3 things are probably enough for you to play for Arsenal up front. He also isn't starting in left back at the moment, Miles is, so it's definitely one of them things to think about as well, because we can kind of risk Calafiori maybe playing a little bit more because he hasn't played as much as some players this season, then people like Trossard or Nwaneri who we've spoken about, so that's definitely another thing to think about. Now we've spoken about 4 players that are in the team for Arsenal right now, so let's speak about someone that is a youngster, because there is a few I've seen people talk about. Now it is weird looking at Hell End again, because we've had 2 brilliant players come through there already this season. How many more can we have? And I do think everyone else in the academy isn't even not ready or never will be, and it is a massive jump. So none of these players I think are ever really going to start in the league or when it matters, but you could easily see come on if Arsenal are winning 3-0 for 10 minutes to rest them players that are really important. Now there's a lot of options that I've seen people say. Now I've heard Keon Edwards, Ismail Kabia, who's a winger, but obviously we can switch up the team a little bit, Charles Sagour Jr. and Osman Kamara. Now these players are all different players that are even good or necessarily not really up to that sort of standard I think right now. I think Edwards could be okay, I think Kabia could also be a decent option, but I haven't seen enough from these players to really say they're good enough to start or even have any sort of inclusion in the team, which I think is very important. I also also think this has come a little bit too early for a lot of these young players that are just not ready. Like Max Dalman probably could have had chances within this team, but obviously he's not because he's not legible, so that's annoying as well. I think an interesting person is Andre Haraman Ononos, who has been a player that's been lighting up the youth academies for Arsenal now this season. He's been incredibly good, who at 17 has done great things, but he's not even really at Premier League 2 level. He isn't playing consistently in that, and he's been incredible for the under 18s. He is only 17, but he is definitely one of the most exciting young striker prospects we do have, although he's not necessarily just a striker. But realistically, my fifth option for the player that Arsenal should maybe consider for some minutes is Butler Odejeji. Now I say this because this guy is 22 years old. That is very old to be playing in the academy, and from an age standpoint I think that it'll probably be best to deal with him with any more of the pressure than any of the other people who are still children basically. And this season he's been good. He scored 8 and assisted 6 goals in the 13 games he has played within the Premier League 2, even getting man of the match quite a lot. Now straight away there's a few problems here, of course. Not only is he 22 and still playing in the academy, that should give you maybe a little bit of a red flag. There's a lot of politics around this player. He was supposed to leave in January, it never really happened, and Arsenal was still yet to sign him on a new deal, which it looks like he's going to leave. So why would they want to play him if he's not going to sign a new deal? That's not a very Arsenal thing to do. He's also not necessarily brilliant. On the 2 loans that he's had, he hasn't actually scored in. Now he's a player that has got a good shot on him. He's proven in the academy that he can get into the box in good areas and be very good at having good connections with people like Miles Skelly before, running in off the left as well, being something that he aims for. He loves kind of shifting the ball out to that left hand side and coming inside, and he is definitely more of a natural striker than a lot of the people who spoke about. He is more willing to run in behind and do these things, but he's not really proven himself at all at a senior level against actual professionals, and I do not think he's probably good enough at all. So hopefully he doesn't have to play much if he does. I also do not think Butler Odejeji is actually the best prospect we have in the academy. I think Edwards is probably better, but there's politics around him leaving as well. Yet again, I could go into it for ages, but we haven't done well enough at acclimatizing youngsters to get into the team unless they're amazing and world-class talent. But I do think he will get given some game time. We saw him come on in the Champions League against Zagreb more than any of the other youngsters, and he is 22, and even if he doesn't sign a new contract and leaves, we can't really care about that right now. We just need him to play and need him to get minutes because we need other players to come off. And I think if Arsenal are beating teams comfortably, you will see him play minutes as well. I mean, if we are beating teams comfortably, I wouldn't even mind if Arsenal played some other youngster to sort of experience that and give him some time, because that's the best way they're going to adapt. And if they are going to sign a new deal, then look, you're playing for the main team, and that's some encouragement there surely. But I wouldn't necessarily be too excited about any of the academy players. They'll probably just sit on the bench for a long time. But I do see Butler Odejeji probably being the best option there and the most likely to, even if he isn't the greatest. Now I hope that in this video you've seen some solutions of maybe we can solve some problems. It's obviously not going to be brilliant, and I think out of any of them I'd rather have Merino start up front because I just don't really want Sterling playing consistently from the start, and at least that gives us a Sterling or Tierney backup in the wing positions. At least gives us some sort of support there until some players come back. But yeah, we just need to get through these games. I think when we've seen the Leicester game, when we've got through them, it'll be interesting to see how we play. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.